All right. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go over the entire process from creating an opportunity in command all the way through to pulling over and sending the documents with your envelope with Zipforms. Everybody here has already created templates at the previous prerequisite classes.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right, great. I'm going to minimize my video real quick. And so when you come in the command, you're going to come down to the opportunity section to create a new opportunity. Your opportunities pull over from the context that you have in your command. So if you do not have that person already added as a contact, you would want to go ahead and do that first. On the right-hand side here, you'll see the blue button that says create an opportunity. We're going to click that and go through the process of creating the opportunity. So you would come down to client. Anything that has a red asterisk next to it must be filled in order to proceed. So you go ahead and you can start typing in your client's name. They'll pop up. You select the client, then you select the name for the opportunity. So if it's going to be a listing or it's going to be a buy side, you would select either listing by landlord tenant. It will populate a name down here. If you want to change it to the name of a property, if it's a buyer and you know that you're buying that property, or a listing, and you know, you can put the name of the property as well. The other thing that needs to be selected is the commission rate. So as a standard rule of thumb, you can put in 3%. Yes, this is a Docusign class, but it's completing from the start of creating the opportunity and pulling the documents over from Zipforms into Docusign. So once you create the opportunity in command, you come over to this Documents tab here. When you select Documents, we're going to go to the right-hand side and do Start a Transaction. For those of you that have Docusign and Dotloop, there will be a drop-down button here to select which platform you're going to pull from. I only use Docusign, so that's why there's no option here. When we select Start a Transaction, it's going to automatically switch and convert the screen into a Docusign screen.
It's blurry, Ted.
What was that?
It's blurry.
What do you mean by blurry?
Like you can't, like I can't see the screen clearly. It's blurry on our side.
Is that for everybody?
I see it fine.
Mine's good.
Okay.
It's small, but it's not blurry. I can read it.
All right.
Ted, when you clicked into this from the opportunity, what did you click?
Okay, so once the opportunity is created, it automatically defaults you to the details screen.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
Then we come over to this Documents tab here. On the right-hand side, you'll see where there will be a Start a Transaction or Create a Transaction. I forget what it says. I think it's Start.
Mm-hmm.
After that happens, it should automatically take you to Docusign. If it does not, then we click Go to Transaction, which means that your Docusign was probably logged out. So we click Go to Transaction, and it will open up the tab for Docusign. Go ahead and log into your Docusign at that time. And it's going to automatically have created the Docusign room with the name and the information of the people that you pulled over, as well as the name of the listing that you created in Docusign. So at this point, or command rather, at this point, command and Docusign are already linked together. What we want to do at this point is come to the details section. We're going to scroll in here, make sure that our seller's name transferred over. Any information that you have that you want to fill in, you can edit and then go down this list and fill in their additional information, cell phone number, anything that you need to populate for your seller. Make sure your information pulled over from your profile. That's all good. That's all there. Then we move to the next tab, which is for the documents. So what we want to do, this is where it differs a little bit from the previous classes. Prior, we were only pulling specifically from Docusign. Now that you have already created your Zipform templates from the other prerequisite classes, this is where it changes. We come over to the Add section. When we click on Add, we want to come to the Zipforms selection screen. So at this point, what we want to do is now we started in Command. We linked Command with Docusign. Now we want to create the transaction in Zipforms and make sure that everything can be done through Docusign. So right here, it's going to say create. We want to create a new transaction. And this is where you would take the name here and use that so that everything is cohesive and easily recognizable between the platforms. So I put Tess Hesterson's listing. If it was a purchase, you would select purchase or whatever you're going to do, right? So listing, a residential listing. Now, in the other class where you created your template and then selected that all new listing, residential listings will pull that template over, that's where this is all going to transfer into Docusign, right? So now we're doing the listing, residential, create. We want to link the transaction. And this is the only transaction that I have that's new, that is not linked to Docusign, right? So it's going to show up, the Tess Testerson. All the documents from the template will now show up here. If you have things in here that are optional and you don't want to bring them in, you can select individually. But the easiest thing, in my opinion, is just to select all and add those to the Docusign room. It's going to take a second. It will add all of those.
Ted,
Yes,
the forms that automatically came over, did I have to template that first?
correct. Yes. So when you're
Yep.
in, get
No, I got it.
when you take the other classes for creating the templates,
Mhm.
so that's specifically going into the Zipforms and how to create the templates.
I have templates already set up because I've always been using Zipforms. I'm one of the
Right.
naughty girls that never crossed over to .loop.
Right.
So yeah, so my templates are in place, same templates, no big deal.
Right. So
Got it.
yeah, that all those templates that you've already created, if you have them set up in Zipforms, that every time you do a new transaction, that they automatically pull that template over, that's going to be the same process here. So when you create the link from Docusign to Zipforms, it's pulling all that paperwork from the templates that you've already created into the Docusign room. Now, if you notice here in the corner, you'll see that they are ZFX files, meaning that this is a zip form file, right? So at this stage, Docusign and Zipforms are now linked together. If you make changes here, or you make changes to that transaction in Zipform, this is the exact same file, but now you can do everything through Docusign.
Nice.
So if I open up the listing contract here, you'll see that all of the changes and everything that I've already saved to my parties and my template will populate here. And you can see in this corner, it says that this is, opening up through Zipforms. So now everything that you've already pre-populated, typed in, wrote your way of business with your X's, your commissions, your percentages, anything that you have on your contracts will now populate into this Docusign room for yourself. If you want to make changes at this stage, you're more than welcome. You can go in there and change off anything that you need to change prior to entering the documents into the envelope to send to your client, right? So this is where you can make your pre-final stage edits. Once you make the changes to your forms and you have everything the way that you want, the way that I make this analogy is now it's kind of similar to the regular US postal system, right? You have your original documents, you have the postal service, which is going to mail everything out, but you have to get the documents into the envelope first, right? So now we want to create an envelope to mail to our client. We go into, yes.
Is there anything to save at that step or no? Just automatically saves?
Yeah, once you come into your forms here and you open up this form and make your final changes, usually when you make a change, it's going to say template saved or document saved. Just give me 1 second just to double check that there's not a save mark that pops up here. Okay, yeah, it does. So it saves when you click off of it, but if this is blue,
Ted, can you hear me? Ted? Oh, God.
Oh,
Ted, we can't hear you.
hello?
We can hear you now.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't been able to hear you for about like a good 3 minutes or so.
Okay, so before this screen, right?
Yeah, like back when you were still in the documents before you moved into envelopes.
Okay. So basically what I was saying on this page is make all of your final edits and changes. Once everything is good, then you switch over to the envelopes section, right? We have our original documents, which are in the documents tab. Now we got to get those out to our clients. And it's just like the normal postal system where we have our original documents, but we have to get them to the client. We need to make a new envelope, right? So you open up the envelope, you create a new envelope and label this envelope whatever you want to identify your, however it is you want to identify, right? At that point, you want to pull in the documents from the room that we are working out of. All of these documents will show up from that Documents tab. You can add as little or as many that you need to get over to your client at this time. But again, just like the regular postal system, once that envelope is sent out, you can't add anything else to the envelope. If you need to mail more documents to your client, you need to get a new envelope, put the documents into it, and then mail it out again. So once you get your documents into your envelope, you want to make sure that you flip the envelope over, right, and add your clients to it. Just like addressing the envelope, you come down to this section. You click on adding a recipient. And the important part of this process here is making sure that you're clicking the pre-tagged roles. And this is going to pull over, the people from the details section that we filled in earlier, right? Ourselves and our client. So pre-tagged roles, we want to select the seller, who is Mr. Testerson. We want to select ourselves and then add those selected tags. At this stage, you may sometimes get a loading circle here. What that's going to do is that's placing all of the signatures, all of the initials, and all the dating on all the documents. So if you have multiple documents inside of the folder, or envelope rather, it may take a couple of seconds here. If you don't have very many, it may be almost instantly. So once all the tags and everything are added to the documents, now we want to select the order in which those documents are going out, right? If you want all of the paperwork to go to both you and the client at the exact same time when you mail it out, you would leave these both as number one. But what is a good thing to do is add your clients second, and it's going to automatically sort this out so that once everything is done, and then you click down send at the bottom, it's going to mail it to you first so that you can kind of proofread, make sure that everything was done properly, add your signatures, initials, and dates where they are needed through Docusign. Once you complete the signature process, it will then package it back up and mail it out to the client. If you had multiple buyers, you can put them in order if you needed to, or at that stage, you would put both of your buyers or both of your sellers as number two, and then they can work through the process with each other. But this is where you can change the order of the recipients. Once that is done, this is where you would change the subject of the email going out to those. As per our discussion, this is the consumer notice, right? If you were just mailing out the consumer notice, this is where you would change what the body of the email itself would consist of. So if you wanted to add little descriptions as to the documents that you're adding, you know, per our conversation earlier, the consumer notice consists of XYZ, just a short description. We will discuss this over the phone when I call you in just a moment, right? That once you finish this out and you click send to your client, at that point, you can reach out to them, call them by phone, leave them a voicemail. Hey, I sent you the email. There's details in there about the paperwork. Give me a call when you get this, or I'll try back at XYZ time. Once everything is filled in, you have your documents here. You have your pre-tagged role recipients. You have the subject and the description for your email message. You could either save and close, which will not send this to your client, but allows you, if you had to run out, an emergency happens, you can save this, not lose any of your data, and come back to it later. Or you can click next, which will take you into a kind of like a proofreading section, your final edits, your final review, making sure all the signatures, initials, and dates are available on all the documents. On the right-hand side over here, you'll see the colored tabs indicating that a signature or an initial is required on that particular form. You can open up the different tabs to see or skip to those pages. If you wanted to click on it, it's going to bring you down to those pages. But you can kind of just make sure that everything is where it needs to be, right? You'll see that on the consumer notice here, our client will have a dated and signed area, your dated and signed area, all of your license information and printed material from your template pulled over, all of your typed in information from your templates pull over to your listing contract. Now, if something happened and you needed to make an edit or a change, you don't necessarily have to back all the way out of this system and go back to the Documents tab. You can if that's the way that you want to work. But if it was something simple, like you forgot to check off a box, you can come down to these areas and either you can create a text box where you can type in here. Click that to size or drag to make it, if you want it to be dead center. If you wanted to do a checkbox, the same thing, you would click and drag the text box over here. You can double click on it and then continue to work through your form, right? So that these will be done when it comes over to you. You don't have to worry about it, rather than, like I said, Xing all the way out. Making sure the initials are there, right? Just double checking your forms, making sure that everything is completely filled in the way that you like. Again, any last edits that you need to make, you can do it at that time. If you're doing a buyer's, a contract and you don't want them to both elect and decline all your inspections, you can add a note as well. So you can come down here and it's just like dragging a sticky note onto that section of your form. You can put it in the column, say for your reference, right? And then your slight little details, right? So that on the form itself, they will have a sticky note there. Please only select either elect or decline on each section, as we've discussed before, just as a reminder for them so that they're not clicking through and selecting everything on both sides. If at any time that you're making a change and you don't want that, you just click on it and press the delete button and it goes away, right? If you come back up here and you decided you didn't want that there, you just delete it and it goes away. Once you have all of your final revisions made here, this is you're putting the stamp on that envelope and mailing it out. So at this point, when you click send, it would then go in the order of recipients that you have, as we saw on the last screen. If you wanted to wait, go back out, you weren't ready to send something happened, that's where you would click back. I'm not going to send this because my test client does not have an actual test email address, and I don't need all the extra emails and notifications coming over to myself. But that is essentially the process of mailing it out. Now, at the next stage, once everything is received back to you, when we're at the Rooms tab here, it's going to show you all of your active rooms, right? So once everything comes back to you, an awful lot of tests in here. I'm looking for, there we go. So once the documents come back to you, it will have a little green check mark in the Documents tab, right? So you'll always have your original documentation, but then you'll have the signed documents as well. If for any reason you were in the middle, let's say my instance right here, you're going back and forth with negotiations for your commission and brokerage fee, right? If the initial envelope that you mailed out to them does not work, you can void it out, enter in the new contracts to a new envelope, and then you'll get that envelope back with all the signed documentation. So once everything comes back signed, you have everything that you need and you want to upload it into the system. When you go into the commands, your opportunities, you would go to your client tab. This client is in the active phase, right? So you would come into the active phase, click on your clients tab. And now in this document section, all the documents that you've linked through Docusign and Zipforms will be listed here as a checkoff list. And then you click add a file. You would select Docusign, and then all of the linked forms will show up in this section, right? So you want the signed forms, right? So if you were looking for a particular form, you come over here, click add a file, click Docusign. You want this signed form, and then you would click assign. Once it loads into this section here, that form will be assigned to this section. If this is not the correct form and you accidentally selected a wrong document, do not worry, you can remove and then add the new form to that line item. If you have all of your documents done and ready to go, you can attach multiple files at the same time. So you don't have to click and individually do one at a time. You don't have to do one at a time. You would select attach multiple files, the same process here from Docusign, and then anything that you need to attach, it will give you the option to pull from a drop-down menu, right? So you can select your listing contract. You can then go on your lead-based paint hazard form. You can select all of them. Once they are all selected from your sheet, you would then attach, and it would individually, one by one, all upload, and you're ready to go. Once all of your documents are in the system and you're ready to submit to the MC, that's where you would click submit to MC, and your uploading process has been completed.
Ted, did I miss something there when we have some of our internal documents and we want to add those too?
Correct. So your Keller Williams, thank you for bringing that up. Your Keller Williams specific forms, you will still be pulling over directly from Docusign. Just like you were pulling over documents prior, all of our office specific forms are already, sorry. Go back to my pipeline and go to my test. So yeah, like the Lockbox Authorization form, all those documents, when you go to add from the Documents tab, you're going to still select Docusign.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll have libraries and groups, right? So you go from the library or group, and I'll show you the differences. The library, it will say Keller Williams 476 specific. Your Pennsylvania PAR forms will be here. I currently am in a technical difficulty that I'm working through with Docusign to have my PAR forms populate, but that's where you'll have your KW forms and your PAR forms here. You select from your library, all those Keller Williams 476 specific documentation will be here, and you can add those in as necessary. If you're needing a group of documents, it will separate into groups as well. If you want a buyer side transaction or a commercial transaction, all of those forms, group specific, you can select by group. But if you're just looking for the 476 forms, you can just do the Docusign library, 476. Those forms will populate. Click what you need to add to that specific transaction. Click add at the bottom. It will add that into your Documents tab. it will show up as a form extension because you're pulling it over from Docusign rather than a ZFX extension, which is from Zipforms. So right here is the Lockbox Authorization form. You open that up. Make any changes that you need to the typable text fields. But you should populate and your client should populate based off of the Details tab.
You're saying it should populate already from our opportunity?
Yes, so your opportunity will populate a certain amount of your details right here, right? The details section. It will automatically pull some of that information over, but once you create this room, you always want to put as much information and details as you have onto your at least buyer and yourself as the listing agent, right? If this stuff is already populating from your profile, then you're all right. You just need to do your seller.
And it will automatically populate the initial and signature places?
Correct. So it's going to pull those. Having that seller or buyer entered in on the details tab is what's going to allow later when you're entering people as recipients from the envelope to be able to select a pre-tagged role, right? Essentially, this is where you're adding your pre-tagged people to the transaction. When you get to the final stage of addressing these envelopes with the documents in them, that drop-down menu will now show pre-tagged roles, and it will allow you to pull people that you have populated in the Details tab so that you're placing the signature, initial, and date sections on all of the documents in that envelope.
That's awesome, because the former way that wasn't connected to command, and all of these weren't uploaded, whenever I loaded the outside forms, I had to manually tag where the initials are. So that's really good news. One last thing. If I'm doing a listing docs, I'm going to include an estimate of closing costs. Now, that's not something in any of these forms. That one I will have to manually attach the initial places, yes?
That is correct. So basically what you would do is if you're doing it, let's say through Bright, right? Once you finish your worksheet through Bright and you download that PDF to your computer, at that point you would come to add from your computer, right? So you've already worked everything out the way that you need to. You upload that PDF to this this screen here, and then all you're going to do is drag your signature for your buyer or your seller over to that estimated or net proceeds sheet, and then mail it out same way. But
I got lost in your order. Thank you so much. But it was the let's see. Once they're in the envelope, so prior to them being in the envelope, I'll select the order of those documents. Just tell me where in the process I select the order of those documents.
So once you're creating the envelope, right, you click Create New Envelope, and then right here on this screen, as you're creating the envelope, it's going to ask you what room documents you would like to add into that specific envelope.
Yeah.
So when you click on Room Documents, it will open up everything from the room.
Sure.
You can select the documents you need. You're adding them. Working just like a book from top to bottom, left to right, right? These are the documents that I wanted. Now I'm scrolling down, adding my recipients for this particular envelope.
Yeah.
Selecting pre-tagged roles. The seller and the listing agent, right? So we want Mr. Testerson and we want myself. And then when we click add, that's automatically adding the signatures to the zip form files, or to your envelope files.
Okay, I got the order of the recipients. I meant the order of the documents. So I've selected all those documents. They go, I want them to appear this way. So it's the same old, same old. Never mind. I'm good.
Right there.
I don't know. I was really following your prescription, like,
Right.
Bible here. I don't want to do anything out of order. So cool. I've done that. No problem.
Drag. Yeah, you just click and drag them around. And again, prior to mailing them out at this next stage, you would be able to see that the consumer notice would be first, and then the lockbox authorization right here on the right-hand side.
Yes. Yep. Okay. All good. Thank you.
Great. There's the consumer notice. There's the lockbox authorization. Signatures and dates ready to go. Click send, and it would mail it out. Are there any other questions that anybody has in reference to anything that we've gone over. Well, that would pretty much be the conclusion of the Docusign with Zipform integration.
Thank you. Well done.
Not a problem. I appreciate everybody for coming out. I will take this recorded class. I will post it on the page. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Monday, Tuesdays, Wednesdays for Docusign, and Thursdays, Fridays for templates, or is that vice versa? Did I do that wrong? Yeah. That's
Well,
it.
Thanks, Ted.
Thank you very much. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Hey, Ted,
Yes.
before you go,